Hello, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I'm Mark Tucker, and we are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Good to see you again, Mark.
Yeah, same with you, Alan.
How's your week been going?
It's been busy and good, and
a week.
I don't know. I guess I'm adding another day in the week because I thought today was Wednesday.
For those that don't know, we usually record on Thursday and also release on Thursday. So we try to, once one is done, we try to get the next one going as soon as possible. But so usually we're recording on Thursday, and that gives me a little time to edit, so we can get things together well. But I know exactly what you mean, Mark. It's just been one of those weeks where you're not quite sure what's going on. Just things kind of appear out of nowhere sometimes.
Yeah, that's the way it goes.
That's the week. Yeah, I hear you.
But that's I know that's pretty typical. We're good. We'll just roll through it here.
We just keep going, and it's not even like we could say that anything bad is happening, because nothing's bad. It's just it's been a week.
I'll tell you something good that happened. I finally broke down and bought a 4K monitor.
Ooh.
And I replaced the monitor that it replaced was a 20-inch that I bought back in like 2011 or something like that. So if things keep working, I'm like, I don't think there's really any reason to replace it. But
I'm exactly the same way. In fact, it wasn't. I only recently updated my monitor again to a high-res monitor when my laptop got updated, and I didn't have any adapters for the old monitor and the new laptop.
Yeah, but I can't believe I've got a lot more space on this monitor, and things are more crisp and clear, and I'm just like, wow. I don't know. I might replace another monitor so I have two that are the same now.
What kind of amazes me about my monitor is I think it is larger and has a higher resolution than anything that I use to watch movies on in the house.
Yeah. So what's new? Anything new on the Google side of things? I haven't checked in lately.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So
tell me more.
Yeah. So in reviewing some documentation for a question that you actually asked me one weekend, I suddenly went quiet on you, and you got a little concerned when I went quiet
like,
on
you. Are you still there?
Right. And it wasn't because I was ignoring your question, and it wasn't because I was, in trouble or anything. It was because I had discovered another page of documentation that I hadn't seen before. And it was documentation about some new SSML tags that were available for the Google Assistant. And I was really excited because these were tags that had been available for cloud for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
But they were listed as beta in cloud, and we didn't know when they were going to make it to the Google Assistant. And it turns out they had been brought over and incorporated into the Google Assistant, still listed as beta, but fully supported on all of the Assistant platforms. And they had made it in, but hadn't yet been announced. So I got really excited about this, because some of these are tags that people have been looking forward to literally for 4 years.
All right, so SSML is speech synthesis markup language, and it's a big deal. It's the format, the output format for text-to-speech that the major platforms have decided to use. It's a standard that's been around for quite a while, and each of the different platforms have implemented different portions of it, and sometimes have augmented different portions of it. But tell me a little bit about what parts. I have an idea of what they might be.
So I think the first big thing to understand is, as you point out, SSML is a standard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a W3C standard, and that's the same consortium that puts out the standards for the World Wide Web. So this is something that's out there and is relatively well understood. But like you say, all the platforms implement it slightly differently. And there is a fantastic resource which you created out there called ssml.guru. And it is a fantastic resource for those who are looking to see exactly which SSML features are supported on which platforms.
Yeah,
So,
and it's just has a page that lists all the different elements and attributes that are in the SSML spec, the 1.0 and the 1.1 spec, with links right to the spec that talks about them. And then across the top are some of the different platforms. So, Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, the different platforms. And there's links that you can click on at the top that will take you right to the documentation page for the voice assistant for what they've implemented with SSML.
Yep. So the big additions this round, there are broadly speaking 4 major additions that they added.
Okay.
The first, and the one that everyone has been begging for 4 years, is the phoneme tag.
All right, tell us about the phoneme, because this is a big deal.
This is a really big deal. So a lot of the SSML work, a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes basically lets us put a word there and it figures out the best way to pronounce that word. Mm-hmm. In using various text-to-speech characteristics. That's fantastic, and it works a huge portion of the time. But every so often, you need to pronounce a word, and it has decided to pronounce it a way that you didn't want. Right. And we've got a bunch of words that are spelled the same but pronounced differently, and it's got to pick one of them. And if you meant the other one, you sometimes need to do some finagling. So one of the things that we commonly do is we will misspell words to try to get the pronunciation to work a little bit better. Phonemes, however, or using the phoneme tag, let you express what the word is directly using fairly standard phonetic alphabets. So instead of trying to map regular words and the letters in them to specific sounds, we just have specific settings for each sound. So since each of the characters maps to a specific sound, you can map out exactly how you want the word to sound, exactly how you want the stresses to be emphasized. There's a variety of things that you can do with phonemes that you just can't do otherwise.
So before Google Assistant had, because Amazon's had phonemes from the beginning.
Yes.
and so what like other tags, or what did you have to do on the Google Assistant side of things before you had phonemes? Suffer.
No. Basically, the best that you could do is take a word and just keep fiddling with it. Adding extra characters or changing how it's spelled in desperate hopes that you can get it to sound more or less like what you wanted. And it was difficult. There are times there was just no way that you could get it to put the syllable in the right place. It was, it really was tough.
Now you had the substitution tag before, right? So you could do a sub. So like you could look at the text, and the text would show the word correctly, but you would say, for this word, I'm going to substitute when I'm saying it. I'm going to substitute what these list of characters or this string, and you'd have to TAY space, different things. Try some hyphens. Just play around with some different things to try to get things to sound different or better. Right.
And that's a good way to make sure that what is shown looks correct, even if you now have to fiddle with the spelling to get it to sound almost correct. But it was a poor substitute for actually just specifying the phonetics behind it.
Right. Okay.
So one of the interesting things and about the phoneme tag is that as part of it, you need to specify what the alphabet you're using is.
Right. So different alphabets, and different languages have different alphabets too available.
Right. Well, because some of them actually have different sounds. There are some sounds that just aren't represented in some alphabets. So like Alexa, it supports the IPA, which is required, actually. The specification says the IPA has to be supported. It also supports XSAMPA, or XS-SAMPA. And the big difference between both of those are just which characters get used to represent which audible sounds. One of the other interesting things, though, is that if you're trying to use phonemes in Chinese, you can't use IPA or XSAMPA in Google. You need to use either Pinyin or I shouldn't have tried to pronounce it, to be fair.
Yeah.
JYUTPING.
Okay, so all of those are supported. So you've got 4 alphabets that are supported.
Four alphabets that are supported. Yep.
With the phoneme. Oh, great.
But but 2 of them are only supported for one particular language.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now, interestingly, so I think the first place I stumbled across IPA was actually, I think, on Wikipedia. If you go on Wikipedia, a lot of times they'll have words, and then they'll have some characters off to the side in parentheses that's the IPA. So you could copy that IPA, paste it in, and just go ahead and work. Have you tried it out on the like the test simulator? I know on Alexa that you can go into the test simulator, and instead of having to actually do the simulation, there's another tab that's you can try out SSML. So you can paste SSML in there and then hear it come back. And I know there's something similar, some sort of a voice tester.
There used to be something similar in the old simulator, in the old test tool.
Yeah.
Now I usually go to Google Cloud's SSML page, and they have a similar entry form there.
Now, does that support phoneme too now? So you can actually test it out? Okay, good.
If you have it set for beta SSML tags, which is what they still consider these, it will work. And the reason why it's beta has more to do with some other tags being treated slightly differently and how pauses work with them. And that actually doesn't really apply in the assistant side of things. So that's huge. It's a major addition to the assistant.
So any idea how long it's been out? That you would think there would be an announcement. This is, like we say, big news.
It's big news. It's been there for at least 2 months.
Oh man, seriously.
So yeah.
So hey, voice designers and developers out there who may not know and that work with Google Assistant, guess what? Something that you probably waited for a long time is there.
And it's great that it's there.
Yes.
But as I started looking into what else was supported, there's even some better stuff here. Phonemes are fantastic, but there are some other tags that they introduced that are pretty remarkable as well.
All right, I'm waiting now.
So one of the other tags that has been around for a number of years, but not officially documented or supported for the assistant, is the voice tag.
Oh, I remember. I think you found like some article and you linked off of SSML Guru. Yeah. Oh, you wrote the article and then you linked to the article. There we go.
Basically, there was a question on Stack Overflow a few years back, and they said, I tried the voice tag and this worked. And I said, oh, that's funny. And I went and tried this attribute and this attribute and this attribute, and they all work. Well, all of those are now officially documented.
All right, so tell us about the voice tag. What does that do?
Normally, when you specify the voice for your assistant, you can specify one of a couple of different voices depending on what your language is. Okay. In English, for example, there are, I think, 3 voices that are generally more feminine sounding and 3 that are more masculine sounding. And of those, a total of 4 use what they call their WaveNet technology, which sounds a little bit better.
Okay.
So unlike Alexa, which adopts Alexa's voice for your skill, you need to pick a new voice for your action because it needs to be different than the Google Assistant's regular voice.
Okay.
Officially, when you're recording, you're allowed to have one voice that you choose.
Okay.
Unofficially, for a few years, you were able to use the voice tag to specify that you wanted a different named voice. And those names would be one of the supported voices that were allowed for your language. They've expanded that. So in addition to just specifying the name of the voice, and mind you, these names are, wonderfully descriptive, like EN-US-WaveNet-A. Really just rolls off the tongue.
As opposed to like the poly voices on Alexa, where you've got Matthew and Joanna.
Right, where they've given them some names. Google intentionally avoided giving them human names because they're trying to avoid overloading that characteristic.
Okay.
So you can still specify it by name, but you can also now use one of 3 other parameters to specify it instead. So you can use name, or you can specify a combination of the gender, the language, and what they refer to as a variant. And a variant is just, if you've got 2 male English voices, do you want to use the first one or the second one?
Okay.
Gender is male, female, or officially neutral, but I don't know that there are any actual neutral voices that are set up yet. But officially, that's one of the values that you can set. And language is just the standard language code that we're familiar with. So EN-US or ENGB or FR for French, for French that they speak in France, or FRCA for the French that they speak in Canada. So the interesting part of this, though, is that specifies the voice, what it sounds like. It's a little different than another new tag called lang for language. So what you can also specify is what the contents of what you're trying to say, what language that is.
Okay.
So what that would then do is kind of let you speak a phrase in a particular language using the same voice that you would be speaking your normal stuff with. So you're looking confused, and this took me a while to sort out myself.
Okay.
So for example, the word CHAT in English would be pronounced chat. In French, and I apologize now to my high school French teacher, it would be pronounced chat. It also means something different, but that's, So they're pronounced slightly differently depending on your language. So if I told it to say, this is my CHAT, in English, that would come across as, this is my chat.
Okay.
But if I put language indicating that it's French around the CHAT, it would say, using the same voice, this is my chat. So it would be like an American trying to pronounce a French word. It would come out mostly correctly, but it would sound like the same voice. Whereas if I tagged CHAT with a voice tag specifying the language for FRFR, it would switch to the default French voice to say that word.
Okay.
So it doesn't sound like it's the same person saying it.
All right, that makes sense. It's a little weird, but it makes sense too. So if the text that you have is in one language, let's say English, and the voice that you choose, you also specify English, it just sounds like an English person saying it.
Right.
Same thing with a French sentence and a French voice, then it would sound like a French person saying it.
Right.
If you were to have English, but then specify that it was a French voice, it would make it sound like it was a French person speaking English with some sort of an accent.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the things this would be great for, though, is if you're doing language, if you've got an action that is teaching a language, you kind of want that audible distinction when you're switching over to a different language.
Kind of like a Duolingo.
Right. So you can hear that the voice is different.
Okay.
Whereas sometimes you just want to designate that the word that's being said is in a different language, but you want to keep using the same voice. So we want it to sound the same as the rest, So if I was saying, well, c'est la vie, that's something that I would say. I would, use a couple of French phrases in my common language, in my common everyday speech.
Yeah.
But I want to designate that as French, so it uses the correct French pronunciation, but with my own voice.
All right, and that's good if you wanted to give your voice assistant a personality, or if you were doing something and you had multiple parts, different characters.
Right.
You could switch back and forth and give a little bit of more variability or more interest in the interactive story or something.
Exactly.
All
So
right.
a lot of really good use for voice and lang. They're similar but different. But I think it's really exciting to see these finally be supported. And I should say, one of the things that multivocal currently supports, and I need to expand it to support lang, is it supports voice already. So you can just specify that the response that you want to give back is being done completely in a particular named voice that you name. So that's one, and it automatically adds all the tags, the relevant tags for you.
Okay, well, that's cool. And just, I guess for completeness on the Alexa side, they have the voice tag. They do have the ability to do lang. So you can do that same type of thing with saying it in one language or the other, or having it spoken as if you're speaking a foreign language, but in your, your other language. Yep.
Interestingly, so there were some interesting gotchas though with the voice tags and how they differ from Alexa. The first is Alexa doesn't support either the variant or the gender tag. All you can do is specify the name.
Yep.
Which is fine. So if you stick to, they're going to be different names anyway on each platform. So you need to do some juggling there. But also Google chose a new tag name to specify the language that's part of a voice. It is a language tag, and the specification says that tag should be called languages. The difference being languages allows for multiple languages to be set there. Whereas Google says you can only set one language that you're using here. We're not going to try to pick a language from this list.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So more on the speech markdown, where we've got differences and trying to figure out how to represent both differences in a single markdown tag. Okay.
To use another example, this is another example I was cooking up to test things out before. So with voice, for example, if you've got your default voice set to an American English voice, you could change the lang to English Great Britain, and it would start speaking in a Great British accent, a UK accent, and switch back. Whereas if you set the lang, using the lang tag, to English GB, it would still sound the same because it's still the American accent. You're just pronouncing words the way a Brit might pronounce the words, which for most words is the same. So that if that helps frame what these tags, the differences between these tags, that might help.
And as always, it's fun just to get in and start playing around and kind of figuring them out and see how they apply to your specific situation.
Right. And, feel free, it's always great to experiment with that sort of thing. I've got a skill I have an action that I keep in a British accent because it just, that sounds right. It's making fun of Shakespeare, and that's just the right accent to make fun of Shakespeare in. So the final update to SSML is there is the tag say as. And one of the interesting things about this is that you can give it a lot of parameters that kind of say, it lets you do things like provide a number. And you can say this number as a huge range of stuff. I mean, say as really is overloaded when it comes to what it does.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So you can handle it. Does it say it as a telephone number? Does it just read out the digits? Does it try to say it as a full number? Does it try to say it as an ordinal number? So, one would be said as first. So they've added interpreting it as a duration. and then specifying the format for that duration. So if you've provided the content as 5:30 and specified the duration as hours:minutes, when it saw the 5:30, it would read that out as 5 hours and 30 minutes.
Okay.
Or whatever is appropriate in the language that you're doing it in. It's a minor thing, but it can be really convenient sometimes when, rather than you trying to format this for all of the languages you want to support.
Yeah, I found that useful. Yeah, I found that useful with dates. Like if I have something in a certain date format, but I want to pronounce it a certain way, then that helps me out.
Yep. So again, it's got uses in a couple of particular places, but it's not a huge thing until, of course, you need it.
Yeah.
So that's all of the major SSML stuff that's available now. Really looking forward to seeing what people are doing with it. I know there have been a lot of people out there that have been waiting for this stuff.
Yeah, I've asked you about it like from time to time over a number of years, saying, "Hey, is there anything new with SSML yet on the Google Assistant side?" So it's good to finally see some progress there. Somebody's thinking about it. There must be some reason somebody added it. Maybe something else needs the feature now, and so they've added it, or they've decided like, "Hey, wonder what we should do," and found a list somewhere of people wanting this feature and decided it was time.
This is one of those cases where they're using the Google Cloud SSML support, because that's a feature that you can get in Google Cloud. Unlike Amazon, which has Amazon Polly as one product that is separate from the SSML support that's part of Alexa itself. They're close, but they're not identical.
Yeah, what it seems like they've done on the Alexa side is they said, okay, we've got Polly and we want to surface Polly for SSML on Alexa. So we will do that on our side of things and surface some certain tags that will allow that to happen, as opposed to, it seems like now you've got that functionality. Because things aren't exactly the same with Polly and the Alexa stuff.
Right. Google just says, we have this service. We're taking care of the calls to the service for you. But it's the exact same code.
Okay.
It's the exact same SSML. So the assistant side basically needed to wait for the Google Cloud side to implement it before they could adopt it themselves.
All right. Well, that's exciting news. I'm glad that we were able to dig into that deeper. And anybody out there that's a designer, developer playing around with SSML, would be interesting to get your feedback on it and see what you like, or if there was something that wasn't quite how you expected. Or just have questions, come talk to us.
Yep. Love to hear what you're doing, how you're using SSML in general, and how you're using these tags or what other tags you want. And we'll talk about it another time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, Alan.
You as well, Mark. Have a good week.
All right.